Ever Chapter 1, The Last Rejection. The rejection letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipping through the mail slot like a blade between ribs. Ethan Cole knew what it was before he even touched it. The thin envelope, the publishing house logo embossed in the corner, the weight of disappointment sealed inside. He'd become something of a connoisseur of rejection over the past 3 years. He poured himself a finger of bottom-shelf whiskey, even though the digital clock on his microwave read 10:17 a.m. The apartment was cold. The heat in his Park Slope walk-up had been temperamental all winter, the ancient radiator clanking and hissing like a dying animal without actually warming the space. The persistent metallic pings had become the soundtrack to his insomnia. He couldn't afford to have it fixed. He couldn't afford much of anything these days. "Fuck it," he muttered, tearing open the envelope with a practiced motion. The paper inside was crisp and professional. He scanned past the pleasantries. "While your manuscript shows promise, we regret to inform you that it doesn't meet our current publishing needs." Ethan didn't bother reading the rest. He'd memorized the cadence of rejection, the compliment sandwich, the vague encouragement, the ultimate dismissal. This particular letter was his 27th since his first novel had crashed and burned. He tossed it onto the coffee table, where it joined a stack of unpaid bills, each one a different shade of urgent. His laptop hummed on the desk beneath the apartment's only window. A half-finished freelance article about luxury watches glowing on the screen. 500 words about timepieces he could never afford, written for people who would never know his name. The irony wasn't lost on him. Ethan Cole, once hailed as the voice of his generation by The New Yorker, now churning out copy for lifestyle blogs at 30 cents a word. He glanced out the window at the February sky, gray as cigarette ash, and without thinking, a line formed in his mind. Winter in Brooklyn, pressed against the glass like a beggar, pale fingers leaving ghosts of frost on the pane. He almost reached for his notebook before catching himself. No point. Beautiful lines didn't pay the rent. The phone rang. His agent, Clara Weiss. He let it go to voicemail, then immediately felt guilty. Clara was one of the few people who still believed in him, even if that belief had grown threadbare. The voicemail alert chimed. He pressed play and put it on speaker. "Ethan, it's Clara. I'm guessing you got the Harper letter today. Listen, don't spiral, okay? We've still got feelers out with 4 other publishers." Her voice softened. "And I may have something else for you. Not writing, exactly. But it pays. Call me back." He stared at the phone for a long moment. Not writing, exactly. The words stung worse than the rejection. 7 years ago, he'd published his debut novel to critical acclaim but modest sales. The sophomore effort had failed to materialize. The words used to flow like water. Now they came in reluctant drops, polluted with self-doubt. Ethan ran a hand through his dark, unwashed hair and caught his reflection in the window. Gaunt face, 3-day stubble, shadows under gray eyes that had once been called perceptive, now just looking tired. 37, and already washed up. He glanced around the cramped apartment. Books lined every wall, stacked in precarious towers on the floor where the shelves had overflowed. Many were review copies from his brief moment of literary relevance, their spines uncracked. His gaze landed on the framed review of his novel that hung beside the bathroom door, the only tangible evidence that he had ever mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from his landlord. "Rent due. 3 days late." Ethan drained his whiskey and dialed Clara back. "Tell me about this job," he said when she answered, not bothering with hello. "Ethan, how are you holding up?" Clara's voice was warm, genuinely concerned. "I'm fine. Just tell me about the job." He wasn't fine. They both knew it. "It's a cataloging gig. Some old estate in the Hudson Valley needs someone to go through their library. The owner was a writer, Victor Maslow. Ever heard of him?" Ethan frowned. The name sounded vaguely familiar, some reclusive horror author from the 70s. Vaguely. "Well, he's been dead for decades, but his estate finally got through probate. They're preparing to sell the place, but the family wants the library cataloged first. Books, manuscripts, the whole deal. They asked for someone with literary background who could recognize valuable material. And you thought of me?" There was an edge to his voice that he couldn't quite disguise. Clara sighed. "I thought of you because you need the money and you're qualified. It's 2 weeks, room and board included. The pay is decent, and honestly, I think getting out of the city might be good for you. Ethan's gaze drifted back to the rejection letter, the unpaid bills, the half-finished article he couldn't bring himself to care about. His bank account had dipped below 3 digits yesterday. He thought about calling Allie, asking to borrow money, but the humiliation would be too much. 8 months since she'd walked out on him, claiming she couldn't watch him self-destruct anymore. Her photographer's eye had always seen too much. The empty bottles he tried to hide, the manuscripts he started and abandoned, the slow erosion of the man she'd fallen in love with. Some days he hated her for leaving. Most days he knew she'd been right to go. When would I start? Monday. I can email you the details if you're interested. He looked at the rejection letter once more, then crumpled it in his fist. I'm interested. The weekend passed in a blur of packing and deadline scrambling. Ethan banged out 3 articles about luxury brands he'd never touch and a restaurant review for a place he couldn't afford to eat. The money would barely cover his overdue rent, but at least his landlord wouldn't change the locks while he was gone. He caught the Metro North from Grand Central on Monday morning, his battered duffel bag stuffed with clothes and his laptop. The train was half empty, commuters heading into the city rather than away from it. As Manhattan receded behind him, Ethan pressed his forehead against the window glass, watching the Hudson River glide past. The water was slate gray under the winter sky, choppy with whitecaps. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Caretaker will meet you at Tarrytown Station. Good luck. Call me if you need anything. Ethan stared at the message, suddenly aware of how little he knew about what he was walking into. Clara had sent over the basic details, cataloging, organizing, identifying valuable first editions or unpublished materials, but not much about the estate itself or the mysterious Victor Maslow. He'd done a quick internet search that yielded surprisingly little. Maslow had published a handful of cult horror novels in the early 70s before retreating from public life. He died in 76, under what some forum posts described as mysterious circumstances. The train's speakers crackled. Next stop, Tarrytown. Ethan gathered his things as the train slowed. Through the window, he could see the small station platform, and beyond it, the steep rise of wooded hills. Somewhere up there was the Maslow estate and 2 weeks of mindless work cataloging the library of a dead man he'd never heard of until 3 days ago. But it was a job. It was money. And maybe, just maybe, being surrounded by books again would rekindle something in him. The train shuddered to a stop. Ethan shouldered his bag and stepped onto the platform. A bitter wind cut through his jacket. At the far end of the platform stood an old man in a heavy coat, holding a sign with Ethan's name scrawled in shaky letters. Harold Dunker, the caretaker, Clara had said. As Ethan approached, the old man's rheumy eyes narrowed, studying him with unexpected intensity. You the writer? Harold asked, his voice like gravel. Ethan hesitated. Was he still a writer? I'm Ethan Cole, he said finally. I'm here for the cataloging job. Harold nodded slowly. Been a long time since anyone's touched those books. He turned toward the parking lot, motioning for Ethan to follow. The house doesn't much like visitors. Some words in those books, they wait for the right eyes to find them. Strange things happen to folks who read what ain't meant for them. What was he like? Maslow, Ethan asked as they walked. Harold's face tightened. Peculiar man. Toward the end, wouldn't leave his study for days. Said he wasn't alone in there. Said the words were speaking back to him. Folks thought he was just eccentric. Writer types, you know. He gave Ethan a sidelong glance. Then they found him at his desk. No wounds, but ink everywhere. Something in the old man's tone sent a chill through Ethan that had nothing to do with the winter air. He followed Harold to an ancient station wagon. Its once blue paint faded to the same gray as the river. As they pulled away from the station, Ethan caught a final glimpse of the train sliding back toward the city, toward normal life. For reasons he couldn't articulate, he felt like he was watching his last chance at escape disappear around the bend. The station wagon climbed into the hills, its aging engine straining against the incline. The interior smelled of cigarettes, old coffee, and something else. A faint metallic scent that reminded Ethan uncomfortably of blood. They left civilization behind with each winding turn. Bare trees clawed at a colorless sky. In the passenger seat, Ethan Cole stared out at the bleak landscape and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into.